The cranes at Qingdao have gone still, their arms frozen above rows of containers that never got the signal to move. Just offshore, cargo ships sit motionless, each one stacked with the minerals that keep America's military alive. Then overnight, Beijing flips the switch. Exports of rare earth materials? Stopped, without a single warning. Within hours, U.S. defense lines go silent. The Pentagon calls it sabotage. China calls it national policy. But what's not up for debate is the math. Nearly 80% of America's weapon systems rely on resources that come from China. Fighter jets, radar systems, missile tech, all dependent on the one supply chain Washington doesn't control. So now the question is simple. How do you stand against a superpower that can turn off your production line whenever it wants? Traders in New York have already given it a name. Beijing Silent Embargo. The timing couldn't be more strategic. Just 2 days before Trump and Xi Jinping were set to meet in Seoul, China's Ministry of Commerce tightened its export rules again, adding 5 more rare earth elements to the banned list. Reuters says that brings the total to 12 key minerals, along with dozens of categories of mining and refining gear. Beijing insists it's for national security, but the markets see it differently, as a calculated move. When Trump got the briefing mid-flight, he reportedly slammed his fist and said, "They waited for this moment. They want leverage." Within hours, according to the Wall Street Journal, he ordered a new wave of 100% tariffs in retaliation. But tariffs take time. China's restrictions hit immediately. Beneath all the technical language, the problem is brutally simple. China refines over 90% of the world's rare earths, the metals that make modern warfare possible. Precision missiles, stealth fighters, radar arrays, drones, even submarines, all depend on them. The US can mine a few at home, but refining them? That's where it's stuck. As the Financial Times put it, the bottleneck isn't the mine, it's the refinery. And that single bottleneck is now America's biggest strategic weakness. A recent report from defense analytics firm Gavini revealed just how deep the dependency runs. More than 80,000 components across nearly 1,900 American weapons systems trace back to Chinese-sourced materials. That's 78% of the Pentagon's arsenal. The Navy depends on China for 92% of its critical minerals. The Air Force, 85%. The Army, 70%. The takeaway is brutal. If Beijing tightens the tap, Washington's entire defense machine stalls. Consider the F-35, the crown jewel of U.S. air power. Each jet needs almost 900 pounds of rare earths for its sensors, targeting, and flight controls. Even if America mined those ores elsewhere, they'd still need refining. And nearly all global capacity for that sits in China. Australia, Canada. They dig the ore, but still ship it to Chinese plants. Mining is the easy part. Processing is the chokehold. When China restricted graphite exports in 2023, most people brushed it off as a minor trade story. But it wasn't. It was a test case. By 2025, Beijing had expanded those same controls, this time covering lithium batteries, synthetic diamonds, and more rare earths. What looks like a supply rule is actually a geopolitical weapon. Meanwhile, America spent decades dismantling its own production base. Back in the 80s, the US closed its biggest rare earth mine in California after China drove prices down. By the time it reopened, China's refining empire was already unshakable. Rebuilding that kind of infrastructure now would take decades. That's why this week's decision cuts so deep. The Wall Street Journal reports that even products made in other countries can be restricted if they contain Chinese origin materials, meaning a magnet built in South Korea or Germany could still fall under Chinese law if any part of it was processed there. That's not a loophole, that's control. Inside the Pentagon, the simulations have already begun. What happens if the rare earth flow stops for just a month? By week 6, missile guidance systems shut down. By week 8, radar assembly slows. By week 12, naval propulsion faces shortages. These figures aren't theory. They're pulled straight from the Defense Department's own data. And Beijing's defense? Simple. They claim it's a countermeasure. The US banned semiconductors. China answers with minerals. Both say it's national security. Both are right. And both are locked in a new kind of economic warfare. At its core, this isn't just a trade issue. It's a battle for industrial dominance. And whoever controls the materials, controls the future. It's not really about who makes the rules. It's about who can afford to wait. Because when a simple export license sits on someone's desk in Beijing for 60 days, entire US factories grind to a halt. America's defense supply chain runs on razor-thin timing. Parts arrive right when they're needed, not months in advance. It's an efficient system, but not one built for political games. And China knows it. Their approval process isn't meant to be fast or transparent. Even close partners like Germany or Japan have to file requests and hope for a reply that might never come. Over the years, Beijing has turned delay itself into a weapon. When Washington tried to choke China's access to advanced chips, Beijing didn't lash out with sweeping bans. Instead, it slipped in vague new export rules, flexible enough to bend when convenient, strict enough to make global markets nervous. That uncertainty alone did the damage. Prices for neodymium oxide, used in everything from fighter jets to electric motors, jumped over 20% within weeks. Automakers scrambled to find alternatives in Vietnam or Estonia, but even those independent suppliers still bought their base materials from Chinese refiners. The deeper America digs for options, the more it realizes the trail always leads back to China's ports. But this crisis isn't only about dependence. It's about denial. For decades, U.S. defense officials assumed stockpiles and friendly nations would protect them from a choke point. Turns out, stockpiles shrink fast, and allies need those same Chinese licenses too. Japan, South Korea, Germany all rely on Chinese processed minerals. Even Canada's newest refining sites use Chinese machinery. The Wall Street Journal pointed out that China's export rules now include not just the materials, but the tools that make those materials usable. Washington's response has been urgent, but scattered. The Trump administration invoked the Defense Production Act, pumping billions into domestic refining and magnet plants. MP Materials, the company running the Mountain Pass mine, got government funding to build a processing facility inside the U.S., but bringing that capacity online takes years, not months. The Pentagon has also been quietly hoarding key minerals like gallium, tungsten, and antimony, trying to build at least a year's cushion. Still, internal reports admitted the truth. There's no quick fix for China's dominance. Then, halfway through an international summit in Seoul, Chinese state media dropped a single sentence. Licensing will continue according to national needs. The message was short, but the meaning was clear. Control would shift depending on politics. Markets panicked. Trump's advisors pushed him to walk out. But instead, he fired back with tariffs on $120 billion worth of Chinese goods. Everything from magnets to EV parts. Beijing's reply was calm. These weren't bans, just new procedures. But in defense manufacturing, a delay can feel exactly like a shutdown. By mid-2025, China's magnet exports had fallen nearly 15% year over year. Factories weren't closing. Paperwork was slowing. That's when Washington started asking the uncomfortable question. How do you fight an economic war when your military depends on your rival's minerals? By September, a classified Pentagon task force proposed something radical, a shared Western rare earth reserve, managed by the US, Japan, and the EU. Think of it like the oil reserves of the 1970s, but for critical minerals. The problem? Every ally wants the same shipments. Coordination means trust, and trust is in short supply. Meanwhile, Beijing kept insisting it wasn't weaponizing resources, just protecting them. But announcing that policy right before Trump's meeting didn't look like coincidence. China's power here isn't military, it's economic, and it lasts longer than any missile test. The Pentagon started reviewing every defense contract for Chinese exposure, only to find that even the tools used to make American chips rely on metals like tungsten and gallium from China. The dependency runs so deep it's practically built into America's industrial DNA. For years, the US believed it could chase cheap efficiency without risking its security. That illusion shattered the moment the crane stopped moving. Now every Pentagon meeting has a new phrase in the budget: mineral resilience. Congress debates subsidies for new refineries in Texas, California, and Canada. Companies lobby for tax breaks to build magnet factories. But rebuilding a global supply chain that took 3 decades to create won't happen overnight. China, meanwhile, is stockpiling everything. Not just rare earths, but copper, nickel, and lithium. According to the Financial Times, Beijing's reserves are at record highs. They're preparing before the conflict, not after. Trump's advisors now compare it to the OPEC oil shock of the 1970s. Except this time, the lifeblood of the global economy isn't oil. It's the metals inside every battery, jet, and missile. By late September, U.S. defense firms began quietly scaling back. Raytheon delayed radar shipments. Lockheed Martin started adjusting designs to fit whatever materials were available, even if it meant sacrificing some performance. These aren't simple supply hiccups. They're strategic compromises. Yet the White House insists America will end dependence. Officials highlight projects in Australia, Brazil, and Canada. But the bottleneck isn't mining, it's processing. Even if new mines open tomorrow, most of that ore would still need to be refined in China. And that's the ultimate advantage. Beijing doesn't have to ban exports. It just needs to control the pace. Inside the Pentagon, one number keeps everyone awake. 78% of U.S. military hardware still depends on Chinese minerals. That isn't just a statistic. It's a structural weakness measured in tons, volts, and seconds. And the most chilling question no one can yet answer is this. When one government office in Beijing holds the keys to the minerals that make America's weapons possible, how many shipments stand between national defense and total dependence? If you made it this far, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and stay tuned. Because this story isn't just about trade. It's about who controls the foundation of modern power.